I uh, I got 3 emailed, texted pictures at the last minute. I got one of them in or 2 of them in.
Really, there was no email the last time I checked, but then I noticed something and I ran outside and took some pictures and changed a couple of things. You've done that before.
Oh, constantly.
Yeah.
Sometimes our thing that we show, if you look at the timestamp on it, it was last modified 2.5 minutes before we started the meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions before we officially begin? Go ahead, Trace.
Hi guys. Hey, so I've just been struggling. I've been cleaning things up a little bit. I think it might be you know, a little early for certain things like peonies, to clean up around them, but I'm struggling with like leaving stuff for our pollinators and cleaning up so it doesn't, look a mess or create uh bacterial viral problems or whatever. So I'm just wondering, where do you draw the line? Like, how do you guys know what to clean out and what to leave?
We don't really. We started cleaning up. I cut some things last Thursday or Friday that we'd left up the whole year because we started seeing the American lady butterflies and the red admirals. So we said, okay, those chrysalises that we had must be they're emerging from those. So we're probably okay to start cutting things down. But it would probably be better to just leave everything. But you have to come up with some kind of a compromise between leaving everything and ending up with that naturalized look that people don't like, where things are taking over and whatever. So we are making it up as we go along. We know that most of the native bumblebees and whatever are hatching out this time of year.
There were some out today that I hadn't seen yet, and
Oh, good.
so yeah, I think it's getting um
Yeah.
sorry,
So I don't think that there's any answer to that, Therese. I
Well,
think that,
personal choice.
yeah, I think everybody has to just do as much as they can. If you can leave something completely wild, along at my son's house, there's the completely wild,
I don't know,
well,
Janet.
thank you guys. I appreciate that I'm
All
not
right.
the only one struggling with that question. So
yeah.
I
I
Yeah,
mean,
we
appreciate
just
it.
clean up. We
some of
actually
the
clean up when we can.
some of the things that I cut down, I bundled up and left them. I left them loosely bundled someplace in case there's more stuff that might be there that I'm not seeing. But I don't know that anybody can really do it totally naturally, not in a subdivision and with neighbors and all the rest of that.
Carol has a hand up. Go
Hey,
ahead.
Carol.
Hello, everyone. I want to say that yesterday I received an order from Brent and Becky's Bulbs. In all my years of gardening, I think it was the first time I ever ordered from them. Herbaceous perennial plugs, absolutely phenomenal roots. They were grown in probably 2.5 inch by maybe 4 inches deep, a plug type pot. I mean, they were advertised as plugs. They're outstanding plugs. The question I have is about, I ordered Phlox paniculata Gina, and I would like to cut the top growth back by about half. It's a little bit spindly. Can I go ahead and do that now?
Oh, sure you can. Um, shouldn't be any problem cutting the top back of a phlox. Even a youngster like that, as long as you don't then put it in a box and ship it off somewhere and let the leaves that are left not have any light. So yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear that the plants look good. I love getting plants in the mail that look wonderful. It's just there's something so delightful about and seeing how they manage to pack them so that they ship without coming out of the pots and whatever. It's just such ingenious people.
Yeah. And a reminder, Brett Heath will be our guest on our next webinar. Part of Brett and Becky's Bulbs.
Thank you.
Nancy's iPad has a hand up.
Steve, I think I'm going to I don't know how to even leave the meeting because I
Quit.
don't have a menu bar, a toolbar for Zoom
Shut down the
anymore.
computer, restart it, I mean,
So I will be back momentarily.
okay, I'll get us formally started.
Okay, all right.
All right. And then you'll have to go over the chat. Oops, she's gone. Never
No, I'm
mind.
not gone yet.
Oh, okay. I'm
Oh.
going to formally start us and then we'll get to Nancy's question. Okay. Good evening and welcome for our gardenatedz.org Free for All Friday. Please make sure that your microphone is muted and unless you're raising your hand, we want you to talk then. And it's up to you whether you want your camera on because it can show whatever is going on. And if you could find your chat button, mine is on a bar down below. Oops, I didn't make my pointer large. And you could have view screens this way. Here's where you could mute and start your video. And the chat, you click on that and it opens a window for you to go in. And that's what people can look like. It was hard to get them all smiling. The participants puts you up and tells you how many are there and who they are. So then you could find a spot where there's a raise hand. It could be a more, it could be somewhere. Every computer has a different area for things, it seems like. Raise hand and we can actually talk to you for your questions. And sometimes it's in a place for reactions. Messaging, please don't message exclusively just to Janet and I. Go ahead and message to the whole group. We monitor the group chat, so we answer better from that rather than direct messaging because we have to switch back and forth. It's just easier if you just come to all of us for the chat. The chat can be very useful. There's a lot of good gardeners involved in this. So anyway, welcome to. I'm Stephen Nicola. Janet McConovich will be here shortly. Oftentimes our daughter Sonia Nicola is with us. She is almost always with us on our webinars, and she does a fabulous job of watching the chat and monitoring for questions and making sure that we get them answered. We've been had Garden A to Z for 12 years now, website, and we just have so much information on there, so many things. We've been writing for a long time. Janet wrote for the Detroit News for 13 years. We both wrote for Michigan Gardener for a long time. We did various books together and published some things. We now do volunteer gardening. Occasionally at the zoo, Janet will go occasionally, but mainly at the Waterford Township Library. On our webinar, we have the Free for All Fridays page. Your link will always be here, that you could go there and click on it and join us. We were also recording this and we'll be posting it on our YouTube, and you'll get the information on that. So, are there any questions at this time? Nancy has a hand up, I see. Nancy's
Stephen, do you want my question now?
Yeah, go ahead. I could answer it if we can't, we'll try to remember and then ask the encyclopedia if she knows.
Okay. First of all, I have great admiration for the two of you navigating through all this technology. It's far beyond what I would be able to do.
Well, that's why Sonia is so helpful to us. She's been involved with it at where she teaches. So, okay. Yep.
I have a question about the freeze that we had last night and the night before. We covered things that we thought were susceptible. One of them is a Japanese maple, an orangeola, that we covered with a thin sheet. And everything else that we covered, including another orangeola and various hostas and so on, not hostas, peonies, all those seem to fare pretty well. But this orangeola that we covered with the thin sheet, when we took the sheet off, the branches, the new growth, still looked wilted. And I wonder, is that possible?
Were they covered all the way to the ground?
Yeah, yes.
Were they touching the sheet?
Yes.
I mean, hard, were the tips that are bent, were they on the cover that you had?
Yes.
They were touching the sheet.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it might have transferred some cold through the sheet. But is that just, I'm not in Michigan, so I can't remember what Steve told me when the cold was. Was that yesterday?
It was yesterday and the day before, so we covered it both days, but we noticed after the first night that it just looked like it had gotten frosted anyway.
28.
And in fact, you could see places on the sheet where the leaf color had stained the sheet.
Wow.
Now,
it
the
got
second
wet.
night,
I wonder whether
Yeah.
it was wet. Yeah, maybe they
It
went
got
in
wet.
and conducted water and it was.
Oh,
And then
from,
possibly came close to freezing.
maybe just from the frost,
It's,
because
if,
it didn't rain.
it's also possible that maybe the heat got to that one sooner and it melted what frost was on the cover, did something to the leaf. I don't know.
Yeah.
They do say that you have to be careful about how quickly, and that's one of the things that happens to peonies, is that if they defrost too quickly, they can get burned. And so if you put them on the west side of the house, where they are, if they're frosted, they're blasted by really warm air all at once. They're better on the east side of the house anyway. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe they just defrosted too quickly.
Okay. The second night we kind of tried to
But stakes so she didn't.
yeah, we tried to eliminate that possibility. So we put stakes in that were higher than the foliage, so that
Yeah.
the sheet did not touch at all. So I don't know if it's going to come back or not.
But
You'll have to let us know because I haven't seen that happen or haven't noted that it was happening maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. By the way, is that a cattail that we see on your screen every once in a while?
Yes, and it's probably right in front of me right now.
Yes.
I'm in, for the sake of everybody who is listening and wondering about just that, no, don't walk on the keyboard. No. I'm at our friend Martha Ferguson's, and many of you probably know Martha Ferguson. She was our Master Gardener Coordinator for a good 10 years, I think. And I'm at her house in South Carolina, and on Sunday, she adopted 2 kittens who we thought, this one that's climbing all over me, we thought was going to be a shy, retiring, only hangs on with other cats. But it turned out that she had an infection. And with 1 shot of antibiotic, she turned into this. Her name is Begonia, and her sister is Ruby. Her sister came with the name Ruby. This one, we didn't like the name that she came with, and so she became Begonia. But she is not a shrinking violet, not a flower at all. They're very.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll let you know what happens with this. Thank you.
Yeah.
okay, speaking of frosted plants, it hit our area too, and we only had one night, I think, that I noticed anyway. This is our granddaughter's cabbage, and you could see the frost. What did we call those last night? Frost droplets, frost
Crystals. Yeah, it just
you
crystallizing.
see the crystals on it, and so anyway, by later that day, that's the plant still look. Now that's a cabbage. It's a thick leaf plant. It won't be normally as damaged as any other, and we didn't notice anything on the edges of the leaf. Maybe some cell damage might have happened on them, but
it's a cabbage.
Cabbage. This leaf was already fine.
Yeah.
And
meanwhile, next to it is a mum, which looks a little bit like it. Oh, that's
no, that's not we didn't have the mum. This is our columbine.
Right, but next to the cabbage in the cabbage picture, the mum leaves were just fine. The mum leaves said, see them down in the bottom? They said,
Yeah.
we don't
Oh,
care
yeah.
about going down to 25 degrees.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys care, but we don't care. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are hardy and hardier plants.
Yep, and there's how our Columbine looked that morning. That's how it looks today. So they did fine. The windflowers were down. Some of them have been pollinated and are facing down, but they don't like the real cold. And it takes them a little while, and some of them may not pop back up, but they will. And the tulip went bam and just laid down, and later that day it's right back up. And
Yeah.
that's what our front yard looked like. All the white daffodils were frosted right over, some frost on all the plants. And that's what it looks like today. So,
Thank you, Stephen. I wondered what things looked like this week.
yeah.
Therese was asking before we officially started about cutting things back and helping out the pollinators. That area that you're looking at right there, those purple-leaved plants are Steve's lovely penstemons, various varieties of penstemon digitalis hybrids. And the green blobs are bits of goldenrod and prairie dropseed coming up. And I just cut that area. It was you almost couldn't see the purple leaf flowers. It was just a tangle of branches, stems from last year laying on top of each other. And
You can see a little bit
grass,
up there. I don't have my big pointer, but
right. And I just cut that all down. And a lot of that debris I tucked back underneath our fir tree loose because I'm not sure what might still be in it that we want. Every ecosystem depends on all bits still being there, but we can't leave it right there up by the road where the neighbors are look bad because we're relatively new and we're trying to get more people to grow natives, and we don't want them to think that if you grow natives, they have to be ugly. So we waited until we saw a number of red admirals flying around through the yard, and American lady was laying her eggs just across the green lawn path from the purple plants. So we said, okay, the process has started. We'll give it a week, and then I'll start cutting things back. So anyway.
yeah. So that, all right. There is on the chat, I went back to 6:57. Karen N had a question.
I am sorry, my chat window is very weird on your machine.
She says, I have a hosta Marilyn Monroe that was fully lifted out, but looks like the leaves now have freezer burn from the cold temperatures. Could I trim the leaves all the way back to the ground at this point?
You sure can. Hostas, remember Pauline Banier, Steve, with her hostas?
Yep.
Pauline Banier hybridized a lot of hostas, and she was fantastic. Her whole residential lot was nothing but hostas, and she sold at the farmers market and at the Hosta Society. Introduced hostas. If you have a gold standard, you have one of Pauline Banier's hostas. And if she didn't have a hosta someone was looking for at the farmers market, but she had it back in the garden, she'd say, I'll bring it next week. She would go back to her garden, and no matter what time of year it was, she'd chop the hosta back to nothing, divide it into pieces, and bring them the piece, and it would just grow new leaves again. She said you can't kill a hosta if you replant it in a good place.
Some of the best people will talk about how plants survive and handle transplant are the growers. You know, like Pauline, like who's the other shoot? Now I can't think of the person I thought of a minute ago. Oh well. Priscilla says the hydrangea leaf tires are out on the Annabelle.
Good. So if for those, we were talking last week about those and about crushing them as one good. So what you want to do is squish them while they're still little and before they've tied too many leaves together. Stay ahead of the curve if you possibly can. Thanks, Priscilla.
Yep.
Joyce is wondering about landscape company recommendations. You can certainly ask in chat. I don't know that we could cover all the people that have worked for different people in the meeting, but you can certainly ask in chat and see who they get. We always tell people, as with a company whose work I just looked at for a friend, ask what they've done before. I asked him, I said, tell me someplace where you worked year before last, if you don't mind, and give me a name of somebody I can talk to. And I went and I took a look at what they had done because
Mhm.
I want to know. And sometimes you can't get a recommendation directly from a friend, but you can ask them and they will tell you, of course, somebody that they've done a good job for, but that's what you want to see. You want to see what can they do? What can they accomplish for you? So anyone who has worked with someone that they really recommend highly might want to type that into chat, and Joyce will have someone she can take a look at. We can recommend that you look at the Association of Professional Gardeners website, and that's just what it is, associationofprofessionalgardeners.org, all written out, no gaps, no punctuation. We know just about every member there, and it's a group that's very interested in learning and advancing their knowledge of the field. And they list themselves by the area that they work, as in the geographical region. So you might be able to find something there pretty easily. Associationofprofessionalgardeners.org.
Sue
That's
wants to know, can
yeah.
she divide a delphinium now?
Sure, you can divide anything right now. I will show you dividing an arundo down here in South Carolina right now.
Right now? Okay, hang
Yeah.
on.
You want to switch? Let's try and switch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
you have to stop your share and I'll start my
Yeah.
share. Share screen. And some of you may be hearing me
Well,
out.
if it's
Sorry.
recording off my, okay, there we go.
There we go. I hope you're seeing children at a fountain right now, Stephen.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we'll look at because just while we were working, I'm helping Martha. I'll show you a little bit later. Make the dream garden that she's always wanted to have, and she said to me, I said to her, that place over there would be great for a hydrangea. She said, I don't know how that arundo got there. I said, could we divide some of it right now? She said, sure. I will dig this up, and you can see this is South Carolina. They're a good 5 weeks ahead of Michigan. So she's levering it out of the ground, standing with it. It's a big plant. I mean, that's a full-size digging shovel laying next to it there. And that's what the root mass looks like. We rinsed it off. I chopped it into pieces because I'm considering maybe trying to put one of those into my carry-on bag to bring home.
Oh, not a kitty.
No, not a kitty, not a kitty. I don't think we can handle another kitty. And that's basically what we do with everything. And like I was saying, what Pauline did with hostas at any time of the year. So you can divide a delphinium if the flowering stalk is coming up already, and depending on where you are and how warm it is, you might be getting a flowering stalk coming up already. You might have to clip that back and ask it to make another one because it's hard to keep them straight and unbroken while you're manipulating the plant. But if you can dig around something in a wide circle and then slice into it with a saw or something quite sharp to make chunks like this, you can divide just about anything. I would not divide things that are just about to bloom. The columbine you're going to lose the bloom if you do that. Uh-oh, I now have two kitties attacking here. They are sisters. This is Ruby in my lap. Begonia is looking for a way to get over where I am.
We can barely see her, so.
Okay. All right. So shall I show you what? Oh, I'm not looking at the
Wait,
chat.
we gotta catch up. There's a bunch of, okay.
Okay. Then
Question.
I'm going to stop my share and you go ahead and start with the questions.
Okay.
Okay. All right. What questions? Let me see what's here. Appropriate to
Now I
ask.
have to get back to the chat. Give me a minute.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, Deb wants to know, I have Pachysandra migrating to under my rhododendrons. Should I leave it or take it out?
Take it out.
For sure.
Rhododendrons do not like competition right on their roots. They have a very shallow, broad root system, and they don't compete well with Pachysandra. That's one of the tough plants. That's one of the top dog plants. If it's a great ground cover, it's a greedy plant.
What's the best way to fertilize well-established trees and pines?
is to fertilize your whole soil area. There are roots everywhere from that
Everywhere.
plant. And to put it just at the drip line, or to use those spikes that you pound in and now you've got a concentrated fertilizer in one area, is not effective. But when you fertilize your grass, your lawn, the trees are getting fertilized. So do it that way. We tell people to use a slow release organic fertilizer. Do it in April and do it in October. You've fertilized everything that has roots in the soil. You've provided a form of fertilizer that's gradually going to become available as the soil life processes it. You can't do better than that. There is a way that you can be very good to your trees, and it's because most of our properties are hard packed, to compacted to at least a certain level. If you, what's it called, Steve, when they
Deep root watering, or deep, or deeper than core aerator.
I've forgotten. Vertical mulching, they call it.
Vertical mulching, that's right.
If you get a tree company to come out and vertical mulch around your trees, what they will do is use a power auger, it's probably about 1.5-inch auger drill. They'll drill a hole every 2 feet in a pattern, and into each of the holes, they'll put their air pressure hose and blow up the hose. So they're literally fracturing the soil. That's like loosening the soil deeper in the ground, 12-18 inches down. And if they fertilize as well, they'll put fertilizer into the hole and blow it into those fractured holes. That's a great way to spread the fertilizer in a wider space. But more importantly, what the Arboriculture Society has found is that simply drilling the holes and putting the air in, the plant will respond as if it was fertilized, because loose soil loosens up that much of what's naturally available or should be naturally available to the plants.
And not only that, allows the finer roots to advance easier.
There's been a conversation going on in chat that I caught a little bit of about little blue stem and what varieties we recommend. We have quite a few varieties out there, but we're not keeping track of which one
Any of
does
them.
what. We just wanted to have a number of them, so we had a genetic mix out there. But we think they're all beautiful. Certainly, what was the one that Kurt Blumel hybridized first? He had all the music names, Steve. The Blues.
Yeah.
The Blues was a really nice one. But there are a lot of, we've got what, 6, 7 varieties out there. We keep finding others and we put them out there just so we have the variety.
Yeah. And they'll cross-pollinate maybe, and who knows?
We're hoping.
Yeah. Did I miss a question?
Deb's wondering whether, or assuring people that it won't hurt the rhododendrons to rip the Pachysandra out. No, take it out. It's better to take it out. Yes, you'll do a little bit of root damage to something when you're weeding around it, but if you use a fork and loosen, you can pull out just the roots.
You'd probably do worse if you tried a pesticide or herbicide in there. So dig it out is best.
I hated taking care of gardens for clients that had rhododendrons and azaleas growing in Pachysandra, because every single year I needed to circle around each rhododendron and azalea and cut down and take out the runners of Pachysandra that were infiltrating the rhododendron and azalea roots. How deep do you drill the hole for trees? If you're doing vertical mulching, I think they drill between 12 and 18 inches deep.
Yeah, Paul did. That's what Paul went. He had a 18-inch auger, I think, and he was going about that deep at Tony's yard.
Yeah, and as a warning, if you're doing that in the area where you're vertical mulching all under the tree, if it's a lawn area, be prepared that the lawn is going to have bright green dots on it, because
they're going to grow faster too.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Also, get your property staked if you have underground utilities.
Oh, Corky out in Hawaii says that they've been working on that banyan tree in the terrible fire that was at Lahaina. They've been vertical mulching and it's coming back pretty strong with compost tea. So they're reigniting the soil life by using compost tea. And compost tea is pretty simple to make, but it's also very complicated if you get into it. People who recommend compost tea, some of the extension professors, they're talking about compost tea that's made precisely with different ingredients and what nutrients are in it. The point is that compost has microorganisms in it. And by making a tea, you end up with a solution that you can spread those organisms out. And it's life in the soil that releases nutrients to plants. If there's not life in the soil, if there's not nematodes and bacteria and fungal threads, and then the plants don't get anything. So the more life you get, the better it is.
They don't blow in the mulch. They fill it in. They'll have a scoop and just fill the hole with the mixture. Or if they do, some people do
Wait.
it with a water probe and fire it and have.
Wait. They don't put mulch in the holes.
In
They-
vertical mulching, do they blow in mulch? No.
No,
Oh,
no, they don't.
no.
They don't. They may blow in fertilizer, but all they're doing is trying to blow in air.
Yeah.
Yeah. Vertical mulching, pretty cool. How wide is the hole after drilling? These are narrow, they're just using about an inch and a half auger. So they're just making a small hole going down deep, putting their air hose into the hole and blowing it up. I mean, you can see the ground around each hole kind of lift up after they do it because they're fracturing the soil. It's just like you're taking a fork and breaking up the soil before you do your vegetable garden to loosen it up and make it drain better and make the more accessible to fine roots on your vegetable plants.
You don't necessarily need to have the air hose and blow it to have it fracture, have the soil get better for the trees. So just drilling the holes helps.
Yeah. Back to that banyan tree. All of Maui is watching with bated breath for that tree. Tell her the whole world, Corky, the whole world. I saw that pictures of that tree. And I too am hoping that it makes it. Just hoping that it makes it.
Okay.
Nature does terrible things. Do you want to do another topic that you've got there, Steve? I haven't seen anything come by that we haven't.
No, you go.
Okay.
You show your South Carolina.
Okay. Michelle Armstrong is asking about whether a tree company that's using liquid fertilizer and blasts it into the holes, is that good for the tree? Liquid fertilizer is pretty much a waste if you put it anywhere down below the surface because it's just going to leach down out of the root zone. Liquid fertilizers, especially if your soil is sandy and drains well, should be just off your radar entirely. You shouldn't be using liquid fertilizers there. A good tree care company wouldn't do that. Well, I shouldn't say that.
You never know.
Yeah, I have to say this because Steve and I had a good laugh over this. I'm in South Carolina. There are different plants that do well here than do at home. So I'm trying to learn about which plants do well. There's lots and lots of Ligularia, although this might be a species of Ligularia that they've changed the name to Farfugium, which sounds to me like Dr. Seuss made it up. At any rate, they don't call it Ligularia, they don't call it Farfugium, they call it something that it looks like. And I'll let you think about what that looks like. Tractor seats. They call it tractor seats. And not just a few people, everybody calls it tractor seats. Are you growing tractor seats? I love it.
Yep. Okay,
I'm going to go back to my topics list. And what I came here to do, besides just to see, I have to get a thing out of the way here. Go away. Uh-oh. There we go. I came here to help with I do not like your keyboard, Stephen. It's too sensitive for my shaky hands.
well, I asked you if you wanted to take a mouse and you said
No, the mouse I'd still have to use it. Anyway, that's okay. We came here last October and Martha told us then she would like now now she's got the time in her life. She wants to have the garden of her dreams. And I said, well, let me help you design that. This is looking into her backyard, which is, as you can see there, dappled light, at least at this time of day when I took the picture, and not a huge yard. And what we did last fall, Steve and I, is we figured out a basic design, and now I'm back to refine that design and to get it going. So if you look there, you can see some lines on the ground during the sunny part of the day. We have, Martha and I, trenched around the lines that I outlined. there's a bit of paint left here by the white bucket because I outlined without a tape measure. I was going by what I drew, but not measuring it precisely, and found that I hadn't left quite the 4-foot path. So our trench is on the inside, but that's a bed. This is going to be a bed. And this here is a bed and a place for a fountain. So we have been playing with that, and I have been learning about plants that grow here and learning about this specific yard on the sunlight. You could see how dappled shade it was in the morning, all morning, and then in the afternoon, it's quite bright sun for about 3 hours. I had to rush out earlier today because there was overcast skies and I could get something without the shadows on it. So the idea is to put the garden out where she can see it, but keep her traditional South Carolina yard, more about that in a bit, around the edges. Traditional as in palm trees, arundo grass, gardenias, brugmansias, perennial salvias. But you can see how the light changes in there, and I've been watching that to make sure that I place plants where those that are always in the shade are ones that like to be always in the shade, etc. The basic outline of the beds is set up so that when you come in from this side of the yard, past the big live oak whose flare you can see over on the side of the picture there. But when you come in this way, that the garden presents itself to you across your screen. You're not looking at it sideways, it's presenting itself to you. You can also see in this picture just how good it is to have shade in your yard when you're in a place that gets as hot in the summertime as South Carolina. Look at the difference where the sun is out there in the street beyond.
That's not even summertime. You're talking.
Yeah, we're still spring here. So the garden presents itself across your view, which is a pleasant way to look at a garden, and this bed does. Then you can go, whoops. Then you can go along. I'm not sure why I put that one in. Then you can go along the path to the left that goes toward the street and the sidewalk where all the neighbors walk back and forth. And from that angle, looking in from the sidewalk or coming around the side of the house, you're presented with, this is a bed on the left, bed on the right. You're presented with a path that takes your eye through the yard and off to the side where we will place a bench back here in a little sitting alcove. And on the other opening from the sidewalk, this bed right here will be something pretty to look at, but kind of block the path. Say, we don't really want everybody walking into the yard. This is if we welcome you, it's not going to be from this side. That space is for that feature to move out. Right now, that fountain, which John found for Martha, was it $50 that he found that for? And had several very strong people bring it home. It's a beautiful fountain, but it's set right now in a very formal symmetrical placement. It's in the middle of a symmetrical area. And when you do that, the tendency is to want to have the same thing on either side. And plants, if you want a dream garden with as many different kinds of plants as you want to grow, it doesn't lend itself to having the same thing on either side, and plants don't always do that. So we'll move that fountain over to the outside. So we started last fall with a design that said, here's what we can do in your yard. That path that goes through, we'll put a bench back there. And because I'm not familiar with what grows well, I know what things are hardy here, and I can certainly see some things that grow, but I don't know how they grow here. I don't want to let loose crazy things in Martha's garden, and I don't want to depend on something to be wonderful when it's not going to thrive here. So I designed it for coarse low. See, I said, I need an area right here that's coarse and low. When you come in under that oak, I want to be able to see across a lower and medium part, fine medium, coarse medium, toward that fountain from that angle. So I designed it based on, these are the kinds of plants we want to put in it. And now I've refined it to what will go in there. Some of them still, vernal sweet pea on my list still has a question mark because the people at the nurseries here that I've been talking to have never heard of that plant before. I said, well, it's such a good plant, and I know it's unusual, so we're going to try it. But most of the things we've found are things that I have found growing here, seen growing here, and think these will make it. So we're working at that toward that. And this is a lot of fun. This is now what I've wanted to do for 40 years, is just have fun and work at the pace that we want to work at, that we don't have to have this done next Tuesday. We don't have to have it ready and spiffed up in time for a graduation party in the yard. We just have to have fun out there, and we are having a lot of fun. We are putting a patio around the big live oak, well, we will, and we'll be using what Steve and I have done, and we've told you we've done before, in order to respect the roots of the trees. So that flare root coming out is, I think I found it out here about as big around as my wrist, about 40 feet out. Those we don't want to mess with. So we don't want to hire somebody to come in and dig down the soil, put in a base, put bricks on top of it. What we want to do is build above the soil that's there a permeable patio, something that the water can get through and continue to aerate the roots. So we're going to be using geocells. We've told you about this before. These are products. There are a number of them. Most of them are called GeoGrid, the same way that most of us call tissues, facial tissues, we call them Kleenex, or we call a sticky dressing for your wound a Band-Aid, but they're not all Band-Aids, and they're not all GeoGrid. So this, for instance, is geocells. They're spread on the ground, and you can buy them for different amounts of traffic. There are geocells that you can use for driving on. There are geocells for walking on. But what you do is put them on the ground, anchor them, and then fill them. You can fill them with gravel, you can fill them with soil and put grass seed in. And we've seen botanical gardens use them in heavy wear on their lawn, but they want to keep a lawn there. They'll put in geocells, fill in soil, and then seed it with grass so that the pressure from all those feet is being taken more by the plastic cells that are in there. So we're having fun. We're finding suppliers. We're testing the soil. This is one. Let's see. Is this the topsoil? Yes, this is the topsoil in Martha's yard, and to the right is the subsoil. We're testing them separately because they're two very distinct layers, and because her lawn has been fertilized, so chances are that that topsoil is going to test, not fakely, it's not going to test authentically, because they'll be testing and finding the fertilizer that's in it. We're also doing a drainage test. Well, we did a drainage test. I dug a hole 18 inches deep. We were looking down into the hole, and you're looking past the topsoil that's quite dark. It's a loamy clay, and I'm sorry, a sandy clay, and below it, the light colored stuff. And when I dug that hole, I found that it was mottled. There are areas with grayish color, areas with brown color. That usually indicates a soil that sometimes doesn't drain well and sometimes is draining okay. So it made me think we need to check the drainage. There's the profile with the roots growing in it. And of course we need to check the drainage. This is Charleston, the city of Charleston. It's called the Peninsular City. If you fly in, it looks just like this. You can see the lights of everybody's streets along the inlets from the rivers. There is a lot of water in the soil here. Every neighborhood has a community dock on it to take you out past the salt marsh, because the rivers are tidal rivers where there's salt water part of the time, and then the flow goes out the other way and it's fresh water. It's an incredibly beautiful environment. So that 18-inch deep hole I filled with water at 10:30 yesterday morning, and at 2:30, about half the water had drained out, and 12 hours later, the hole was dry. It was empty, but for a little frog that had decided to sit in the pond that I'd created for it. So since the water drained out in 12 hours, we have good drainage. You wouldn't think it looking at that clay, at the subsoil being that color, but it's draining well, and so we can plant just about anything in there without making a raised bed. So that's that's what I'm doing here, and I'm having fun doing it. Why am I, oh, wet areas. So we've written about this before, about what to grow in wet areas, but I didn't have to switch to wet area plants. Are there, I don't have my chat open, Steve. I'll open it back up and we'll see
Okay,
if,
there's, let's see, somebody has vinca under hydrangeas. Should I move it? I put a thumbs up that you should. I don't like vinca.
under
Reeds.
hydrangeas,
Yeah,
different matter than rhododendrons. Rhododendrons are not happy with things growing at their feet. Go into the Smokies. Steve's been there many times. These rhododendrons don't have anything growing under them.
very little.
Hydrangeas are another matter. Hydrangeas are usually growing closer to the edge of the woods, and they're used to competing. If you dig them up, you'll find they have a lot heavier root further out than rhododendrons do, where the rhododendrons have a lot more fine roots. So the vinca's not really terrible underneath
I just
hydrangea.
don't like it around woodies. I'd rather leave a space for the woody.
We aren't real keen on vinca anyway, because it's hard to contain. It's hard to keep vinca from being the only plant in the bed if you want to grow small things.
Suzanne has dogwood with lots of suckers, Coosa dogwood growing vertically from the main branches. It's 30 years old. I think she thinks she should remove them.
If they're from the main branches, they are supplying, well, no matter where they're growing, they're supplying starch to the root system and the rest of the tree. If they're growing from the main branches, the chances are that you've lost, send us a picture of the whole, step back so you can see the whole tree, and send us a picture, will you, Suzanne?
Yeah.
Because chances are that Coosa has lost its leader, and what you're seeing is epicormic growth, is you're seeing the tree, call it gasping for breath. It's losing wood too fast. So don't be in a hurry to take those off. Maybe there's a root problem that can be solved, and you can let those suckers, they're also called water sprouts when they grow vertically from branches that are bent outward. Let those water sprouts feed the tree, like our friend Chuck Martin. And Chuck will be with us when did we set that up for? Sometime this summer, Chuck Martin will be here speaking with us. He's retired now, was horticulturist at Dow Gardens and one of our great friends for years. He told me one time, when I had a group of people there learning about trees, and we were standing and looking at a tree and discussing what we would cut and what we would leave. Somebody said, "So you're going to do that now?" to Chuck. And he said, "I'm not going anywhere, and this tree's not going anywhere. If that's still doing the tree some good, I'm going to leave it for a year or so and then take it out afterwards."
Joyce is thinking about using a firehouse arborvitae or a globe arborvitae in a partial shade garden rehab that she's starting from scratch. Do we have any opinion on?
I'm going to quote Mike Durr on that one to say that arborvitaes, they'll grow almost any place you put them, but they need to have moist soil and loose soil in order to grow enough root to support whatever green they're putting out there. Remember that the arborvitaes that you buy at the nursery were grown in the full sun, and if you put them into a deep shade, even though they'll survive, they're going to thin themselves out, and they're going to thin themselves out often in ways you don't want to. You don't want them to. They're going to lose branches you didn't want them to lose. So make sure that they can grow as much root as possible. Make sure that they're planted at the right depth, and they can grow in part shade. They won't grow in deep shade. They'll look terrible in deep shade.
Yeah.
But in part shade, they will grow.
Deer do tend to go to them once in a while, so that could be an problem.
Once in a while, yeah, they do like arborvitaes.
Yeah.
Suzanne calls tractors. Yep.
Yeah, Carol's mentioning that Vinca minor is considered has escaped into the woods near her, and it is invasive.
Oh yeah, it's on most north United States invasive plants lists, and it deserves to be, because it moves in the ground, and it moves by seed, and it can outcompete other plants. Some plants, like what were we talking about, Steve, in the Pennsylvania garden that David Culp has?
Sure.
Oh, squill and bluebells, the woodland bluebells. Yes, they spread, but they don't persist. Once you stop cultivating that ground, the natives move back in and hold their own. and even push things out. So there are some things that are invasive and high on the list because they persist on their own, nobody doing anything with them. And myrtle is one of those, Vinca minor. Oh, I'm
There-
glad deer have not bothered Teresa's arborvitae, because when they move in, they can really move in.
Yeah.
They're eating, they're eating
Gretchen,
cane. Yeah.
Gretchen's jersey is up, but it was looking healthy, but the frost seemed to hurt it. I think it should
Roger,
recover.
Rogerzia is frost sensitive. Often it gets killed
Okay.
all the way back. So does Japanese waxbill. There are a few of those
Yeah.
Asian woodland plants that they did not grow up with frost in an environment that's an island environment, lots of moisture in the air and more moderated than here. They just didn't know how to deal with frost. So when I've seen Rogerzia touched by the frost, I just cut the leaves off and ask it to grow back again.
Wait, there's something else to show.
Corky's talking about Lily of the Valley. She did a smart thing when she moved to a state she hadn't been before, Montana. She asked at the extension, what about my Lily of the Valley? And they said, no, 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 no. They'd never heard of it. And it could be that it didn't do well there.
Yeah, it could be amazing. Sure.
Am I sharing my screen? I'm sorry.
Yes, the whole time. I forgot
am-
to say something about that.
I am sorry. Let's get, we got
questions.
so many pretty pictures from Steve, and I'm showing a list, for crying out loud. Although the list did say what things are on my list.
Yeah.
We got a message today, Steve, from Margie about mulch volunteers working on a the cat's back, working on an area that is a community garden. And she had a question about smothering grass, and I think it would be good to talk about that and about Sonia's clivia.
Well, smother is the bottom one on your list.
Yeah, I just had to get my chat out of the way. So this is the picture that Margie provided, and she said they've got 7 yards of mulch coming in, and she thinks that the grass should be cut short before they put paper and mulch on top of it. And that certainly helps because there's tension in a grass blade, and it will hold paper up. Whoops. It'll hold paper up, and you don't want airspace and growing space for grass. So cut it short before they put that down. She asked whether cardboard would work. Maybe they could just put cardboard. Cardboard may hold the grass down better, but cardboard and mulch, in my experience, has been hard to walk on.
Very slippery.
Yeah, some of the cardboard will lay flat and some of it will try to pump up, and it just becomes unsteady footing for people. And as somebody who's now having trouble walking sometimes, I can really appreciate that you don't want to do that if you can help it.
If you're going to use paper, you also better have a thick layer of mulch on, because people scrape the mulch and rip the paper.
Yeah, at the grandkids elementary school, when we helped, we smothered the grass in a big area so that they could put in 14 picnic tables and have a place for the kids to come outside and eat lunch. And we smothered that with whole sections of paper. I told people I need at least 5 or 6 layers of paper. And we overlap the paper sections by half when we open them up. So actually you end up with 12 layers of paper. And that worked. Kids walking on it and whatever, but anything less than that, it would have ripped the paper, and then the grass and the weeds underneath would have come through.
I mow that as short as I possibly could too.
Yeah.
Might take 2.
Oh, shoot. I'm going to have to close my chat window, Steve. That I can't manage to look at everything and see what's going on here. Whoop.
Okay.
You
want to stop your share or what?
Well, I'm trying to get back to my topics list, and for some reason I can't go forward or backward. I don't know why. There we go. There we go. Okay. It's probably just my hands. They're doing their usual thing.
There was
Oh, I want to show you why, one of the things that I found in learning about plants here. This is our friend Judith Mueller's place in downtown Charleston, in historic Charleston. The building that you see back there is the carriage house to her house, which is the white edge that you see here. Is I'm on the 3rd floor porch looking down at the garden. And she's restored this whole garden. I know Judith, I've known her for 30 years, and she loves perennials. And yet the garden is all shrubs and trees and grasses. It's beautiful. You walk in from the street, you walk in this way to the house, or you can duck through a path right there and walk through the garden. And this is, the garden isn't 300 years old. The house is nearly that old, but the garden is well over 150 years old. So she's restored it, but it's shrubs and trees, and that's what's going on all over Charleston. You can go to the nurseries and you can buy perennials, but what people plant and are growing, perhaps because winter is long and growable, and they can grow gardenias and camellias and all different kinds of hollies and grape hollies and whatever. But that's what you see in most landscapes is trees and shrubs. So it's been hard, not hard, it's been fun, but taken a lot of time and visits to go and see different nurseries and see what grows. Because even someone like my friend Judith has just one Siberian iris, a little bit of phlox, but everything else is various boxwoods and hollies and crepe myrtles and those kinds of things. We did just today see this one, and it's a fairly new garden, and you can see what's there, Steve. You see your penstemons?
Yeah, but
Yep.
they're not purple.
No, they're not
Well,
purple.
they'd be nice. They'll
And
be,
this is a brand new garden. Most gardens are much more just palms and shrubs and trees. So it's been interesting to go around and look to find out what grows well. So it's a different.
interesting planting pattern back there.
Yeah, the lines.
No, yeah, lines lead you right to the garage.
Well, to the point where Joyce was asking about recommendations for landscapers, if the landscapers are all pretty much here planting crepe myrtles and boxwood and holly, then they have a particular technique that they've learned and patterns that they've learned. They're not used to doing perennial gardens. Martha and I are of a mind that people are going to be looking in those windows that we left into the garden, looking in, going, "Ooh, that's really
Ooh,
cool,"
what's
and
that?
we might be able to
change
start a new
things.
look.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Get back to chat.
Okay.
Okay. Go to questions. Okay. Can you please suggest some easy maintenance shrubs for part shade? Also, any shrubs that have an orange color family. Well, any woody plant is going to grow. So by easy, that means you don't want to prune it at all. And orange, I would look at the 9-barks. They could handle the part shade, and they get some very nice orange color.
As long they can handle the part shade as long as it is not dry.
Yeah.
If it's dry, even in the sun, a 9-bark is not going to be happy. We rely pretty heavily on leatherleaf viburnum in the shade. It's a white flower, but some of the viburnum crosses have red and orange berries on them. Let's see which ones would be good. Wright viburnum, like the Wright brothers, viburnum wrightii. There's one that has, that's viburnum trilobum, and that's not going to do in the shade. Let's see. Orange, just want orange features, orange color. Is that, I'm not looking at the chat because it would block my screen again.
And she just said orange color family.
Okay.
I don't know if she meant fall color, flower color, fruit color,
Well, it could be
art
anything.
color.
There aren't very many orange in the shade. The plants that do best in the shade are generally not big showy flowers with a lot of colors because they're not attracting the butterflies and some of the other visual pollinators in there. There's a lot of whites and light blues and light pinks in the shade because they're reflective and they telegraph themselves better that way. The lindiras, how about the Lindera angustifolia? And we're going to send you on a trip looking for a plant that's hard to find. But our native spice bush is Lindera benzoin, and it blooms yellow and turns kind of a yellowy gold in the fall, so orange color family. But the Asian Lindera is Lindera angustifolia, like an Angus cow, angustifolia. And it has yellow flowers on it, but you won't really care about the flowers. The foliage color in the fall is outstanding. It goes from red orange to salmon colored, and then the leaves stay on in the winter salmon colored and come off in the spring as the new leaves come
Yeah.
on.
It's a
It's
beautiful
hard to
show.
find, but well worth it. Or witch hazels. So which of the witch hazels are orange, Steve? Jelena,
Alina,
like Helena with a J.
yeah.
Um,
There's a couple others that go orange. They tend to have the orangey flower, so they tend to have the orangey fall color.
oh, yeah. Diana, I think, is another one.
Diana, yeah, and then some lean to red after that, but there's so many witch hazels out there. You just have to, I hope your nursery has an orange one that would work.
Yeah, look into those if you can then.
Yeah.
Should I open the chat back up? I feel like I'm leaning too much on you, Steve, and I should have known.
Let's see, I am naturalizing grape hyacinth in HD to semi. I had to move I'm confused. Diane's
Right.
question keeps breaking up, so.
I'm tucking them in among vinca.
Yeah.
If grape hyacinth, the problem with vinca is it's evergreen and it tends to shade out most other plants. They don't get a chance to set seed. They don't get to start early. So it may or may not make it. You might not get um, a full look on your grape hyacinth, but you might have flowers popping up here and there. And let's see, are they earlier? They're a little later, I think, blooming than the vinca, so it might give you more color a longer period of time. So I don't think that you're making a mistake, but it's not, it isn't one of the combinations I would come up with and say, this will be an outstanding combination. I think it might look a little spotty.
Suzanne recommended Fothergilla for the orange.
Right? Because it turns a nice orange color.
Certain one at certain times. Kristen is asking about an old established peonies are up about 12 inches. When should I fertilize with what? It's our usual organic, slow released organic fertilizer, but first you should probably do a soil test.
Yeah, for what kind of fertilizer the best answer is do a soil test and find out what your soil needs. A lot of people are overloading their soil with one or another nutrient. And if you overload a nutrient, you can actually lock up the other nutrients, especially if you're overloading phosphorus. So we use a slow release organic, something like holly tone, garden tone, tree tone. Don't worry about which one it is. Look for one, if you don't have a soil test, look for one that is even numbers, 5, 5, 5, 10, 10, 10. And we fertilize peonies as they break the ground in the spring, but that's because we're fertilizing in April. And we'll fertilize again in October as they're packing away their nutrients for the wintertime.
Richie said Sarah ordered her plants for the corporate parking lot. They didn't have St. John's wort, so she ordered Baptisia. Good. Well, one's a woody and one's a perennial. That's a big difference.
The Baptisia blooms earlier, far earlier than the Hypericum does. It's not woody, so it's going to be gone in the wintertime. It tends to get wider and wider across more quickly than the Hypericum does. So it's different. Good or bad kind of is not kind of good or bad is a function of what you set out to do. So you'd have to look at what other plants are involved, what blooming sequence you were looking at, what height you wanted to have, what kind of baptisia that you're putting in, because there are baptisias with orange flowers, baptisia with blue flowers. So I think she has to go back to her objectives in the first place. I think that this is the project that you told us about where she is planting natives to show people, in which case objective met. You're showing them baptisia. If you were looking for a blooming sequence, you might have to change something else because you put baptisia in that blooms at a different time than the Hypericum. But
And withstanding a parking lot, a woody has a much better chance, I think, than perennials sometimes. With them piling snow up, and that maybe the woody wouldn't. I don't know.
you know what? You've got a really good point there, Steve. When they pile so much snow on the places where on the islands in the wintertime that
Maybe
woody
the
plants
Baptisia is
get
better.
broken off. So the baptisia may be better for that reason. Certainly for us, many of the things in our front yard where we've taken the beds all the way out to the street, I've planned for the day when the septic field has to be changed, because the septic field is in the middle of our front yard. And that means they're gonna have to drive over it. So everything I've put in the front garden is something that when the day comes, I can cut it to the ground, put landscape fabric and then mulch on top of it, the landscape fabric, so that I can find the original level and let them drive in and out on top of it. But nobody does that in a parking lot. They just break off all the branches, and that's a little different than cutting it off that one time you need to do it.
All right, it's 8 o'clock.
It is?
Yeah.
Wow.
You
Wow.
got an end page?
Wait, before you guys go. Spring sounds. I don't have a picture for this.
Well, click on the
I
right
have
one.
learned, I have learned of a new sound that happens in the spring.
You
Well,
hit
not a new,
smother.
I know. I learned of a new sound that you hear in the spring. Here in South Carolina, they know about it, but for me, it's new. And for those of you who think that, oh, you have a tough time with deer or with whatever, what if your spring sounds was alligators singing and courting each other? Alligators sing
Whoa.
in the springtime, and several weeks later, alligator babies peep. Everybody here where we are, and in much of this area, has fences, low fences around their yard. So there's no restriction in their homeowners association against having fences as there is in ours, because you want a low fence all the way to the ground so the alligators do not walk into your yard. Just down the road here, one walked into somebody's yard and got up on their porch somehow, and then pushed into the door after the dog food, and it took them 2 days to get that alligator removed.
Whoa.
So I'm not going to worry about raccoons and deer anymore. I am just going to take off my hat to the South Carolinians who handle the alligators. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. And it is May 10th will be the next time we have a free-for-all. But remember, we do have webinars, and the people who are subscribing to our webinars are the people who are making these free-for-all Fridays possible for you. So you might want to take a look at our webinars. You can send us an email that say you'd like in. We'll add you to the list and look for your subscription fee to come later. But you can try it out that way, or you can try it out on our free webinars page. And if you do send a picture, so Sonia sent a clivia, and I will answer her directly. But if you send a picture for us to put on a Free-for-All Friday or a webinar, try to get it to us the day before so that we have time to work that in and give you an answer.
And high resolution.
And Sonia told me that she wasn't, Sonia, one of our webinar attendees, told me that she wasn't sure what high resolution meant. It just means if your camera or your phone asks you if you want to resize the picture, it's going to take out detail. It will be at lower resolution. So if you can avoid resizing the picture, just send it to us as you take it with your phone or your camera. Don't let it get resized, because then we can't zoom in and see the details that we often need to see. So you take the sign off, Steve, because you've got the recording going over there. I'm really glad that you could be here with us. I really hope that the weekend is good. I'm coming home and hoping that I didn't miss too much bloom. Steve told me it was cold enough that things went
Slowed
on.
it down a little.
Yeah, thank you.
All
Thanks
right.
for being here, guys.
All right. Thank you all. Goodbye. Have a great evening.